Ladies and gentlemen, we believe that having a child of your own is something that's a basic human want.
Shame.
It's something so basic that, it's something very basic that almost everybody wants it. The problem is that not everyone can do it. The problem is that not everyone is given the opportunity to get a child, to continue himself, and to leave a legacy in this world. We think that when you allow surrogacy, when you allow people to have their sperm and egg, or just sperm depending on the sexuality of the couple, or just egg, give it to a different person and have that implanted in them, it gives them the ability to have a continuation to their lives, gives them an ability to leave a legacy in this world and have a child, which is what they so dearly want. I'm going to talk about two things. I'm going to talk about, first of all, why we want this so much, why we care about having children, why we care about having children of our own spawn, children of our own. The second thing I'm going to be talking about is women, how this affects women, because, you know, Bella is speaking after me, so I probably should discuss that at some point. Sit down. And how it affects them, how we think it actually gives them an ability to make their lives better in some cases, how it's, especially if we compare it to the current options of, people who are going to India and having surrogacy done there, we think it's much better if we can make sure that it's done in a safe environment. So, what are we going to do? Well, after my mechanism. So, what we think we're going to do, what we're going to do is we're going to allow women who want to become surrogates to undergo testing, undergo physical testing, undergo mental testing, psychological testing, try and make sure that it's as fair as possible and minimize the people who are pressured into doing it. We're going to make sure that they have medical care at all times. They're going to be allowed to abort the baby, obviously for medical reasons. We believe that the market will evaluate the price that they're going to get. Obviously, though, we're going to set a certain cap and make sure that certain basic needs are always going to be fulfilled. Is there a clarification now? No. Okay. So let's talk about babies. Let's talk about why we want to have babies. So we believe that this allows you to fulfill yourself. See, we think that it's a basic want and need to have a continuation, to leave a mark in this world. We think this for two reasons. First of all, we see this from two reasons. First of all, we see that people like to have, are very small and like to believe that they're actually something, that there's something in this world that they are giving on to the future. Because it's a scary thing to think that nothing we're doing is actually meaningful. We see this in Ecclesiastes and books like that, where they describe how much of an empty feeling it is to realize you have no effect on the future of the world, no effect on what's going to happen in anything that's ever going to happen in the history. What people seem to want to do, as we see, is leave their mark in history. Leave the idea that they did something, they made a difference. We see this by people donating their names for buildings, so that a building somewhere has their name, so that people 300 years from now might remember who they are, so that this big place we call Earth is a little less scary, is a little bit more of what I want it to be. Now we see this also, this is why people like to have children. Children give you that feeling of I'm continuing something, I'm continuing myself. I don't stop here. My journey in this world doesn't end now, doesn't end here. There is purpose and meaning to my life. The second reason that they do this is because we see that there's a biological, evolutionary explanation to this. Meaning our basic genes and biology forces us to want to have children. Because the second we want to have children, it's more likely that our genes continue. And that's what's happened because of evolution. We are more likely to want to have kids, to want to continue ourselves. This is a basic need that we have and feel like we want. Meaning to fulfill ourselves in many cases, a lot of people feel that the way to fulfill themselves, the way they feel happy in this world, is that they're able to continue themselves using children. Now, who are we talking about here, though? Because who are we saying that's being harmed? You know what? Yeah.
Okay, so seeing as you're now making desperately poor women monetize their uteri, isn't becoming baby machines for which women want to avoid labor, how doesn't this make them systematically worth less than these rich women?
Okay, we'll get to that in my women point. You probably should have waited until I speak about that, but I'll refer to it then. Okay, so who are we talking about though? Because who does this hurt? right? We see three groups of people who are completely hurt by the status quo. We see, first of all, people who don't just want a child, they want their child. They want their own genes to be continued. They want their own spawn to be continued. Now, we think that the idea of what is important for me to continue is a completely personal choice. While I don't want kids at all because they're kind of annoying, a lot of people want to have, just in general, a child that they rear and teach and have that continue. And a lot of people, because of the evolutionary thing, and because of other, whatever they believe, they want their own child. They want something that is completely and utterly theirs, that their genes spawn. Now, we think we're hurting them because they don't have a way to get children of their own. Second of all, we hurt minorities because in many places, it's much harder for them to adopt children. We see places like, dark places like Israel, where if you're Arab, you're less likely to get a baby because parents are allowed to choose. And we see places where it's done more covertly, and parents are allowed to, and it's going to be done because of implicit things, because the person who gets to decide which family it goes to probably won't choose the minority. Same thing with the third group, which is gay people. We think that gay people aren't getting children, they aren't allowed to adopt in many countries because of legal reasons, and they aren't getting adopted children because the people who are running these places seem to think that gay people are worse parents. So these three people are extremely harmed. They have it's basically the only way for them to get a child, to fulfill the basic need of having children. It's a huge harm for them, which we think supersedes the harm to women. But let's talk about them, and this will answer alone. See, what we believe is that first of all, we're trying to minimize how much how much you're using these people, how much you're using these women by giving them better rights. Second of all, we think that it's going to happen in many cases anyway by going to India and having them have much worse standards. Meaning the question is, do we want these women to have the basic needs and get money, or do we want them to have the babies but without the basic needs? So we think that in order to get these women to have the most basic standards, to get them to have a better situation, to allow them to continue themselves and help the groups I spoke about, I beg you to propose.